Well, I told you it was coming and now it's here. This is the top 10 things in video games that I like. Now, after this list, next time, I don't know when, I'm going to do a top 10 list of things in games that I don't like. Because there are things that you enjoy in video games, and there are things that you hate with every fiber of your being. Now this is going to be an extremely personal list, so try not to be too upset with some of the things I put in here. So, number 10, characters that keep me guessing, or as I like to call, curious characters. Now, this could be used in multiple different ways. There's the classic hero that has different goals in mind. There's a classic villain with different goals in mind. There's heroes. There's anti-heroes. There's anti-heroines. They just keep coming. The reason I like these is because, well, they're a mystery to me. And I like seeing characters that make me think about them. The best example... I gotta warn you. I am going to be using the games I've reviewed before as a lot of examples. The best example I could come up with in terms of this is Ada Wong from the Resident Evil series. Speaking of which, I am probably going to redo a lot those reviews because for multiple ones like in the first, third, and pretty much a great deal of the games, I had no idea what I was talking about. So, anyway, Ada, to be honest, I kind of thought at first sight, oh god, is she gonna be a villain? Just because the fact that okay, I know this is extreme profiling, but due to the fact that she's constantly in red, pretty much symbolizes you're gonna die for me. I mean, to me, it symbolizes you're going to die. Anyway, when I thought about it and I saw this character in every game or movie she was in, I kind of grew to like this character, but I also really hated her for being a backstabber. But then when I found out what her ultimate goals were, I felt like an ass for being so misjudgeful, or misjudging, or whatever you say it is. So, characters that keep me guessing. Just think about them. I can't come up with catchphrases for this. Anyway, number 9 is decent controls. Yeah, I know there's gonna be a couple obvious things in this list, like decent controls, nice looking areas, but I'm not gonna put things like graphics in there. Because to me, graphics don't mean jack. So, controls of a game pretty much make it playable. The angry video game nerd can tell you a lot of them that had horrible controls. But games like the No More Heroes franchise, Gun, and Red Dead Redemption that I've played are actually have fairly decent controls for being a third-person shooter where you go mounting up on horses and whatnot. Probably the controls I suck the most at are first-person shooters. Because you can't see if something's coming from the side or anything, or from behind you, and, well, pretty much the obvious stuff. The only first-person shooter I'm actually good at is Team Fortress 2, because it's incredibly balanced. And the rule is, if you keep moving, you won't get hit. But that's on a computer. I can play PC first-person shooters really easy. On consoles like Medal of Honor, Call of Duty, or Halo, I suck at those games. Probably the controls that were the most difficult for me to learn, again, were Resident Evil controls. Probably because I've never played these types of games before, and it was just a kind of a steep learning curve for me. So, decent controls, you either play them or you don't. Number 8. Chemistry. Character chemistry. Okay, no, not even that. No, I'm not going to put character chemistry this low on the list. I'll save that for later. Number 8 is pretty much nice looking areas. I mean, if you got Now, this was an extremely massive problem in the 64-bit era. Now, don't get me wrong, there were great things on the Nintendo 64, like Conker's Bad Fur Day, GoldenEye was wonderful, but games like Earthworm Jim 64, or Earthworm Jim 3D, or whatever it was, the Red Room, the Green Room, and the Red and Green Room. Pretty much, Video Game Confessions says it all. Now, there are places in games that look really nice, like in a game I'm going to get to later called Pitfall: The Lost Expedition. Those backgrounds were spectacular! They were realistic and big, while still having their sense of cartooniness to it, because, well, the characters were somewhat cartoony in appearance, but actually seemed like real people. I'm going to review that game later. When? I don't know. Whenever I get the most quiet time. Number 7, I would like to say, is a decent story. Now, this is where the game of Conker's Bad Fur Day falls down the tube. And that's because you're dodging a villain that's pissed off over a glass of spilled milk? Okay, that's not enough. But anyway, in that game, you go from literal crap to a talking scarecrow. Okay, the point is that story is extremely confusing and unsatisfying in the end. The Phoenix, whatever, the Phoenix something, I don't know. Some guy who loves to complain about games on YouTube, not the Angry Video Game Nerd, someone else, admitted he really despises Conker's Bad Fur Day for its horrible story. Okay, I'm getting off track again. Anyway, these sort of things can make a difference between a good game and a bad game, because if you're really into the story, you're gonna like the game, obviously. I mean, the games that show this the most are every Metal Gear Solid game known to man. Now, those games are kind of okay for me. Metal Gear Solid 3 being my favorite, of course. Anyway, so the storytelling can make the difference. Number 6, variety. Yeah, that's it. This is especially popular in games involving violence. I mean, if you could switch from a primary weapon to a secondary weapon to a close-range weapon, per se, like I said in Team Fortress 2, my favorite being a sniper. It's got the most variety. You can switch from a sniper rifle to a submachine gun to a kukri, which it already in and of itself is pretty decent variety. Then you get a shield, and you get the Jarate, which is pretty much jars of piss. We all know what it is. And plus, there's the spy's revolver and the backstab and whatnot. It just, variety in weapons and play style are what I like in games, because you get to choose however you want. That's pretty much all I can say about it. Number 5. Okay, hear me out. Escort missions. I know, everybody hates these. I don't. It's because, I don't know, maybe I'm just a naturally protective person, and I take my protective nature into video games. And if I do, I don't know, maybe I just sort of bond with the characters. Even in games like, I don't know, any game that has an escort mission like Resident Evil 2 or anything like, I mean, not Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 4, there's a reason I didn't hate it. It's because I was protective. This varies on the person. That's the big thing with escort missions. It depends on the person. So this is the most personal item for me on this list. Number 4 is decent character development. Now, character development can be used amazingly. Like, if your character goes from, like, a dreg of the street or a generic hero to... Well, if you turn your character from a generic hero to a dreg of the street or vice versa, that's interesting development, as long as you got a good story to back it up. So, best example, No More Heroes. well, No More Heroes 2, because, well, just think of it. Travis goes from a complete loser trying to get a piece of Sylvia, and now he becomes somebody who can actually make a fairly decent hero. How ironic, in a game called No More Heroes. And then again, character development can be used the wrong way. Per se, Chris from Resident Evil 6. He goes from being a hero I'm actually okay with. In the first game, Code Veronica, and as well as Code Veronica X, I kind of like the guy. But once you get to Resident Evil 5 and 6, he becomes kind of a jackass. Now, to his credit, after what he's seen, I'd be a bit of a bastard too. So character development, that's all you need. Well, not all you need. Tie it in with a good story, and you got something interesting. Number 3. I had to think about it for a second there. Number 3 is, without a doubt, likable characters. Yeah, this sort of ties in with the character development and storyline. If you got a character that you can relate to, or you got a character that you hate them so much that you love them, or just generally a nice guy, or a nice girl, or whatever, it's just, what can I say? If you bond with them, you're gonna like the game. It's obvious. It's a no-brainer that I put it on this list. Number 2. Number 2 is what I like to call twists and turns. Yeah, you already know what it means. Now, the game that shows this more than anything else is a very sick and twisted game that came out of Japan called Catherine. Oh my god, that was a weird game. And I don't mean weird as in bad. It's actually really good. There's just so many twists and turns around every corner, I don't even know what to do with it. It's even got multiple endings. Let's see, first it involves you dealing with the relationship problem, to talking with somebody who turns out to be a devil, but it's a hallucination. I don't know! So, in the end, is it a hallucination or not? That's up to the player to decide. So, twists and turns can screw with your head and can get you invested. Number 1, character chemistry. Yeah, I already told you about this. Said I was going to put this a little lower on the list, but no. Character chemistry is what makes a game push. Now, I'm going to use Resident Evil as an example again. Specifically, Resident Evil 2. The conversations between Claire and Sherry and the conversations between Leon and Ada are really good for a game with such small problems with voice acting. Ooh, speaking of which, I hear they're going to be remaking that game. Please bring back classic Resident Evil. You already remade the first game and it did really well. Remake the second game, Capcom, and give some closure on Leon and Ada, or at least have her escape with them instead of the 2 tear-jerking as hell endings that you gave her that left us incredibly confused. Anyway, though the ones I do have to admit seem the most natural and likable to me are the conversations between Claire and Sherry. Claire just happens to have all the good convos in there throughout the entire game series. When Sherry kind of looks up to her as kind of an older sister, I can actually really respect that. There was someone else that I could look up to earlier in life, but unfortunately I cannot talk about that. While Leon and Ada's does seem kind of suspicious and maybe a bit forced, it's still likable. I mean, you do see those two having a future together despite them having totally different professions. I'm just waiting for it to happen. So character chemistry is what drives a game forward for me. It's what makes a game. If you can have the characters hating each other for a good reason, liking each other for a good reason, having some good conversations with them, having some just something that brings them together. That's pretty much all I ask for in a game. So that was the top 10 things in games that I enjoy the most. Don't agree with me? You're getting your revenge next time when I talk about the top 10 things in games that I hate. So, see you then.